Hey, it's Yay for Yarn, and today I'm going to show you how to knit stripes on a flat panel on your Addi Knitting Machine. So I have begun my flat panel here. This is the Addi King, and I'm going to give you some tips on how to knit stripes without having to cut the yarn a million times as you go back and forth between colors. So I am ready to switch colors now, and I'm going to switch to this color right here. This is the same yarn in a different colorway. And what we're going to do is, as we go back and forth between our colors, we're going to be carrying the unused yarn up the edge of the panel so that we're not constantly, every time we knit a stripe, cutting the yarn, starting again with the main color yarn. So we're just going to have the starting tail from our second color, and then the ending tail from our second color, and then the main color tail from the entire panel. We don't have to worry about, having lots of tails to weave in just because we're doing stripes. So I am going to begin the next row by bringing up the first needle that my panel starts with. And I'm going to take my main color yarn out of the yarn guide and move it away, out of the way of any of the needles that are currently up. So I'm going to bring my needle up like that. I'm going to leave about a 6 to 8 inch tail on my second color yarn, and I'm going to hook that second color yarn in the first needle and bring it down into my yarn guide, and I'm going to begin knitting a couple rows with my second color yarn. Now, one thing that I really recommend doing if you're going to do stripes is I highly recommend doing an even number of rows in every stripe, because we're going to be twisting the yarns together every time we come back to this edge over here. And if we do a single row stripe, we're going to be at the opposite edge of our panel. So with an even number of rows per stripe, every time we come across, we're going to come right back and end up at the same point where we can again twist the other yarn that we're not using at the moment together with the working yarn to carry it up the edge. So I'm going to knit a total of a 4-row stripe with this kind of sea glass color. But throughout our stripe pattern for the entire panel, we're going to be carrying the yarn up the edge at the end of every other row. So I'm going to knit the first row across, and if your other unused yarn gets caught on one of the tabs, you just release it and let it go and continue across. So there's my first row. I'm going to go back the other way for the second row. And instead of immediately turning around and knitting the next 2 rows of my 4-row stripe, I'm going to remove the yarn from the yarn guide. I'm going to bring the machine forward a little bit so that the black needle is not hooking my yarn. And I'm going to take the main color yarn and the second color yarn that I'm currently using and kind of twist them together. So as you can see right here, they are kind of interlocked, twisted around each other. Then I'm going to push that little twisted part down below this red tab. I'm going to bring the current working yarn that I'm still using back into my yarn guide, and then just hold the other unused yarn out of the way. Because I am on this side of the panel, I like to put the unused yarn over to this side. So now I'm going to go back and knit my next 2 rows of my 4-row stripe. And now I'm going to change back to my main color. So again, I'm going to take my working yarn out of the yarn guide, bring it out like this, and twist it together. And I like to alternate which direction I twist the yarns in, because I don't want to just have it, twisted in the same direction a million times and then get your yarn all twisted up where that you can't pull it anymore. So I like to twist it one way on the first time, then twist it the opposite way the second time, and go back and forth. So now I've got my main color yarn. I'm going to put it back in the yarn guide, and I'm going to knit an 8-row stripe now. So I'm going to knit the first 2 rows, And again, I'm going to take the yarn out of the yarn guide and twist it with the working yarn, like so, so that my unused yarn is off to the side, and I can now place the working yarn back into the yarn guide to knit the next 2 rows. So this will be rows 3 and 4. And again, because I'm still going to keep working with that gray, I'm going to take it out of the yarn guide, twist it with the opposite color again, and make sure that my second yarn is out of the way, and put the gray back into the yarn guide. Now I'm going to go ahead and knit the next 2 rows back and forth. Alright, so I've just got 2 more rows left in my stripe, and I'm going to twist the yarns together again to get that secondary yarn out of the way and put my gray back in the yarn guide. So now I'm going to again knit back and forth one more time for my 7th and 8th rows. And there's my 8th row. So now I'm going to go ahead and change back to my secondary color and work 4 more rows in that color. But first I wanted to show you how to count rows when you are especially working stripes. So you might think you'd be counting the horizontal strands that line up with the needles, but we're actually not. We're going to count the horizontal strands that go in between each stitch column, what is viewed as a stitch column from the front. We're going to be counting these little horizontal strands, which look like upside down versions of the horizontal strands that are lined up with the needles. And that's because if we were to count the ones that line up with the needles, we'd also have to include the loop that's on the little red pegs right here and the strand of yarn that's pulled down into the machine that's creating the next row. So to count rows here, I'm going to be counting these little horizontal bars. So as you can see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And if you are doing this in real life, it's a little easier to see under these red tabs. But that is, I think, one of the best ways that you can count rows on your Addi, especially when you're doing stripes. So I'm going to take the gray out of the yarn guide now, and again, twist the yarn together with the second color and put the second color into the yarn guide, move the unused color out of the way, and now I'm going to knit another 4-row stripe by knitting the first 2 rows back and forth. And then once I've finished the second row, I'm going to take the yarn out of the yarn guide again and twist it with the unused yarn, place my working yarn back into the yarn guide, and knit the next 2 rows. Alright, now I can just twist the yarns together again and start working with my gray and work another stripe. So if you're interested in seeing what this panel is going to become, just make sure you're subscribed to my channel. Click the little bell so you get notifications when I post new videos, and this is going to be a tutorial coming soon on my channel. So that is my favorite way to work stripes back and forth on a flat panel on your Addi Knitting Machine. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know if you've ever knit stripes on your Addi in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, making sure you click the little bell next to the subscribe button to be notified of new videos. Thanks for watching.